Now ask yourself a few questions. Let's compare the two worldviews. Is it that Israel controls America, or is it America is an empire? What about the Greater Israel Project, whether it succeeds or not, and the war in Iran? What about those two things? Is in any way in conflict with the American empire, if you want to assume it? Nothing. America wants to turn that whole area into subordinates or friendlies. So if Israel increases its area under its jurisdiction, and it's increasing it into the areas most hostile to the Western Empire, then why would the empire greet that with anything but joy that their allied control is growing in the area? They would prefer that all of the different countries had relationships like the Gulf states do. But anybody who's resisting that, enemy of my enemy. Ask yourself, what does America do for Israel that's against its imperial interests? Rubio said that they attacked because they knew that Israel was going to attack, and they knew that if Israel attacked, that Iran would retaliate and attack American assets in that retaliation.
We stood and waited for that attack to come first. Before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
So that to me is just as compatible with the idea that one of America's subordinates, Israel, is acting out as most, as we want to call them, as I called them earlier, Frankenstein monsters, act as subordinates of empires. The connection is that the empires' objective, Israel is defining its ambition within the context of the imperial framework. Every one of the colonists that came with a charter to govern a large area of any part of the Americas, they're there at the pleasure of the British Empire. But while they're there, they're obviously going to be trying to cut their own side deals. And don't forget, and eventually America did say, you know what, we're just going to do our own thing. So that's always a weakness. You got a whole bunch of employees. You always got to watch out that one of those employees that you're trusting to do a large part of whatever your thing is can be stealing from you. There's so many things that you can watch on YouTube, whether it be somebody at like the Dollar Tree, and they're doing whatever they're doing. They're taking the drop off of the cash register and they're stealing it. There's all kinds of things that people do. So that's always a vulnerability of something as it's growing, because you can't be completely in control of everything. You're gonna have to defer to other people in places, and if you're asleep at the wheel, then yeah, people can take advantage of you, and that's every coup d'etat that's ever happened in history. Ask yourself another question. Why do you think, forgetting who signed what paper, Balfour Declaration, because putting all that aside, because that's kind of irrelevant in this point, why do you think England was willing to give up that area? One, there was like a lot of revolutions and stuff like that, so being a colonial power was becoming expensive, right? Most of the colonies that were given up, it was because of that. The first ones that started being given up, like on the coast of West Africa, that the Portuguese were given up, is because the slaves were rebelling like crazy. It was becoming expensive, right? And they started breaking all their different rules just to survive it. They were like, okay, we're gonna start having sex with some of the slaves, and then they're gonna be this whole like population that we're gonna put as like a buffer in between to kind of take the heat off of us. But even that didn't work, so they had to give it up. That's always there as a potential. Do you think England gave that land for the purposes of founding the state of Israel because they gave a damn about anybody with Jewish descent? Well, that definitely is not the case. Europe was super anti-Semitic. Nobody was willing to even accept a lot of the victims from the Holocaust. So this whole idea that like it was given as some sort of like altruistic action, it wasn't. It was just that instead of us having to run this place, let someone else run it. That was from the perspective of the empire. That's why Israel was made a reality when it was. And all the other justifications, Zionism, was ad hoc. The people who had those ideas may have had those ideas, and those ideas may have stretched all the way back. But the empire's consent to endorse it follows that line. or follows that logic. Other question you want to ask yourself is, how can they control America? What in Israel is more powerful than the City of London and Wall Street? And there's no way you can say that Israel controls Wall Street. You might think that Wall Street and the City of London would want to support Israel, but obviously they're gonna have to support Israel strategically. The same reason they're gonna have to support Saudi Arabia or Dubai or Egypt. Do American people, and a lot of them are Zionists and Wall Street, put a lot of money towards people promoting Israel in a positive light? Yes. But there's financial reasons for that. As you're seeing right now with the Strait of Hormuz being closed off, the more that the West dominates Southwest Asia, the better it is for the richest among the imperial oligarchy. So it should be obvious that that control of that area, and control in every way, including the moral high ground, would be desirable for the empire. And as far as Mearsheimer's point, which is probably the best of all these points, why would there be any need to have lobbies contributing all this money to promote the idea of Israel? If it was in America's interests, it should be automatic. They shouldn't need to have any lobbying.
Now, I want to directly address the question that you raise, which is, how do I deal with people who say that Israel does our bidding? This is not a case of the tail wagging the dog. The dog gets the tail to do what it wants, okay? My simple response to that is that if that were true, you would not need a lobby. You would not need this incredibly powerful group of individuals and organizations working overtime to influence American foreign policy. If Israel was such a strategic and moral asset, the government would just axiomatically support Israel, and you wouldn't need a lobby. The reason that you need the lobby is because Israel is a strategic liability and it is a moral liability. And therefore, the lobby has to work to get the United States to support Israel. It is the tail that wags the dog.
But the problem is, we're talking about America's imperial interests, the military-industrial complex. Why do they have lobbying? Because their lobbying dwarfs the Israel lobby. So why are they necessary? Aren't they against the common good of the American people? Yes. But are they against the imperial objectives? No. So there's lobbies for Israel for the same reason that there's lobbies for the military-industrial complex, because the American government has a susceptibility to money and influence. So there's only a few administrations, American administrations, that were not controlled by this dynamic. There has always been, whether it was from the British influence, and the funny thing is that everyone wants to talk about Jewish influence or Israeli influence or the Jewish lobby's influence, when there was a case that it was news for about a week. Cambridge Analytica. So this is a British organization that's responsible for manipulating geopolitics worldwide. But nobody thinks about the fact that your government is controlled from the financial empire of the British Empire. So that is the part where even people like Ben Shapiro and idiots like Bill Maher and all these jackasses, have a point. But I'm not supporting any of those bozos, because they're pushing a completely different agenda and they're apologists for something completely else. But on that one point, America does have a problem with money in politics. And I'll give Cenk Uygur credit, because he did actually say that.
You do seem to, clearly you're very passionate about this, it does seem to have become the subject that you are fixated on.
Yeah. So that part is true. But I'm not monomaniacal. So let's talk about that distinction, right? So you remember when I got banned from Britain for criticizing the oil companies? Right. Neither do I. So now the oil companies actually get $35 billion in subsidies every year. That's actually nearly 10 times what Israel gets. Now, Israel gets more for the genocide. Israel's gotten more overall. But per year, the oil companies get 10 times more. That's terrible. And I talk about that all the time. Why are you robbing us to give it to ExxonMobil and Chevron? We can barely afford our rent or our mortgage, and those are the most profitable companies in the world. But that criticism never gets you canceled. It never gets you banned. So when and then they say, well, why don't you criticize China as much? Well, first of all, I do. They have concentration camps for the Uyghurs. That's the ethnic people that my family is named after. I'm not part of that ethnicity, but they're Turkic overall, but that particular sect I'm not in, but we're named after them. That's how much we care about them. I haven't had their government in exile on the Young Turks, but that gets no attention because it's not about Israel, and no one comes out and says you're anti-Chinese racist and you should be canceled and your life should be ruined, so it doesn't get any attention. But when I criticize Israel, that gets a lot of attention because they say, how dare you brand him with the anti-Semite, right? So that's part of why it appears that way. The second reason is Israel is not the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's not the cause of the problem in America. It's a symptom of the problem in America. The cause is money in politics. The cause is corruption. The cause is legalizing bribery. So once we did that, any rational actor, whether it's a corporation or a foreign government, would try to purchase our politicians. And soon America will become an open auction. All the foreign governments will find American citizens to donate through. And since there is no limit, the Adelsons have given over 300 million. You could give 3 billion if you want. So they could come, and China, or hey, by the way, if you guys want, the United Kingdom can buy us. And there's a ton of Americans who are sympathetic to Britain. And if you funnel money to them and they or they use their own money, however they get it, you could literally purchase one politician after another. In fact, like Israel, the Israeli lobby, you can purchase 94% of Congress, and then you would own us.
He's the one pure person of all these people that actually will acknowledge that at any point. But he doesn't emphasize that, you know? So if the argument is that American politics is too open to financial influence, then that nobody would complain about that, you know? But why say that it's like Israeli influence or it's controlled by Israel? How is it controlled by Israel? That's the part that's coming across as either dense or, you know, creeping on anti-Semitism. And I would never push the idea that everything that someone says is anti-Semitic, but not taking into consideration, one, that there is a geostrategic interest to be tied completely to Israel from an American imperial perspective. So a lot of Americans don't want to have to look at that and say that like the problem is the American empire. Because even if you could get Israel tomorrow to have a completely different government that would want something else, I promise you this scenario continues. And not even because, even if Israel decided tomorrow they didn't want it, they wouldn't be able to stop it, is what I'm arguing. That the Western powers are doing everything they can to control it. Could there be like a revolution in the Middle East and then the dynamics could completely change? Yeah, it looks like in a lot of ways the dynamics are changing right now. But I don't believe that Mearsheimer's question of why would we need it at all lands, because a lot of things that we don't need there are lobbying groups for. The only thing that comment illuminates is that there's too much money in politics and that the country can basically be usurped by money powers. But why wouldn't you be looking at the biggest money powers? Like Israel is not a financial behemoth. It is impressive in some ways, but on the world stage, it's not a top ranker in terms of income. It's just a tiny population. It's just not possible. And I think part of the attractiveness to this is that it absolves the Western powers of their part and their responsibility.
You're from Palestine? You're from Palestine? Sorry? It's difficult?
I don't think they're from Palestine.
You're not from Palestine? I thought because you had the tattoo that you were from Palestine. So you're from Palestine. You speak Arabic? Sorry? Right, you're Israeli. Right. Right. Fake state of Israel.
It doesn't exist. Israel doesn't exist.
So did you join
Were you
the?
part of the IDF, IOF? Were you part of the IOF, IDF? Were you part of it? Did you kill innocent civilians? Yes. Did you kill them?
Say you're against Netanyahu. Say you're against Netanyahu.
Say you're against-
What about Ben Gvir?
We got the okay? Now can you shut the
No, don't you dare tell us to shut the f***. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. You are ashamed. You are monsters. You're a monster. Everywhere you go, you are going to be hated. Everywhere you go, you are hated. Nobody likes you. Nobody. Go on. Go away.
Kick them out of all
Go.
Kick them out of all.
It's a little weird to see, like, you know, somebody from England, you know, screaming at some Israeli in a cafe, you know, and basically like tormenting them. You did this, you did this, you did this. And then that same British white person is going to be complaining that like everybody's calling them a racist or whatever the thing is. So I find that thing that's happening, you're seeing all these Europeans, every time they see an Israeli person in like a cafe or shop or wherever they see them, they're like scream at them in public, tape it, embarrass the person. It's like strangers. And you don't see anybody really having a problem with that. And I'm just sitting there, and that's why I'm thinking that this is a symptom of that. It's like these Western people are like getting really high on their high horse and they're like pointing a finger. But it's just the irony. You know, it's possible to say that you're against the war in Gaza or that you are appalled by the crimes against humanity or that you think it's a genocide or you think it's an ethnic cleansing. All of those things are separate from saying that Israel controls America. And I think if you were listening and paying attention to everything that I said so far, I think you at least got something to think about as a challenge to the idea that Israel has control over America. But I want to hear from you, so let me know in the comments. Tell me if you think there's anything that I said incorrectly or there's something about my argument that doesn't follow, or if you think I was cheating in any way, let me know. Let's have a discussion. If you've been here before, you know that I respond to everything, so let me know in the comments what you think. If you like what you've seen, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's get the subscribers up. Come on, I gave you something there, but you look at how many subscribers we got here. We can move that up. You can do it. Let's go. Big foe.
I've been down this road before, but now I got my shit together.